Hey guys, June Williams here, and I am so excited to be getting started with you on the Getting Back to Easy program. So let's just jump right in. We're going to start with the program overview of what we're going to be doing together. So let's just zoom out and kind of consider what the function of the program is for. So it is designed to get you back into warm, easy, and open connection. I know it might have been something that you've experienced recently, or it might have been something that you haven't experienced in a long time. But regardless, that's one of the goals. Learning skills for communication, gaining strength in your parenting relationship, right? And one really fun item is getting your sexy back, right? So we will be working on a lot of different skills in a whole variety of areas. The program overview is to kind of describe to you the structure that we're going to be working from. The program is designed to be completed in 4 months or 16 weeks. And you're going to have access to me for the coaching for the entire full months. But one really cool thing that you might not know is that you're going to have access to the course material for an entire year. So you can keep on checking back on the information, kind of hitting your reset button, checking back in on the course material, and then trying your experiments again rather, and then getting back into that good connection that you will gather over the program. So one of the things that's going to be really important that you're going to be learning about is kind of the way that the program works. And that's kind of what it is that you need to do. So first you're going to in each module, you're going to go through each video that's in that module. I want you to complete all assignments. Often they're going to be a kind of a mental or thought experiment, observation of behavior. It may not be writing much down, but I want you to take them seriously and to make sure that you take care of each and every assignment that is in the program. And then consistently with commitment attend your weekly coaching call. Okay, so when we are on our coaching calls, I want to talk to you a little bit about the function of them as well as the format so you can kind of know what to expect. We will be working together to problem solve any obstacles that you run into. I am directive and offer a ton of feedback. I've worked with a lot of couples and know some shortcuts as far as what will not be helpful and what are some more helpful, meaning more productive ways for conversations to go. So I'll be offering that all throughout those coaching calls, as well as redirecting what I'll talk about as other focus. This means focusing on anyone else other than your own problems, your own responsibilities, and your own self-care. I will tell you that other focus is the thing that will derail your progress faster than just about anything else. So I'm really interested, really invested in redirecting when that focus has gone off track. The format of the calls is going to be really easy. I'm going to check in, I'll summarize the lesson, make sure you don't have any questions about some of these new paradigm shifts, and then we will step into that problem-solving role. Important things about how the entire program keeps its general kind of experience of being positive and looking forward to progress. And that is going to be as you each adhere to these house rules. So in its essence, the base of these rules is that you are taking responsibility for things that belong to you. So that means that as you take responsibility, you get curious, you ask questions, you talk about yourself, not your partner, and two other really important pieces, which is no complaining and no blaming. When we talk about things, we talk about it from the perspective of what is it that we can do to make changes rather than talking about what seems to not be working. I need to learn about what's not working, of course, but I want you to keep that positive perspective so that we can be focused on what kinds of experiments can we run and what can we be learning together. Another thing that we can consider in this Start Here video is how to get help during the program. The goal is that you don't ever feel alone and that you feel like I am your resource to be learning about how to make these big changes in your relationship. So some ways to start in that process of getting help during this program is to take the videos seriously. I want you to be taking notes during the videos because often there will be ideas within that you haven't considered before and haven't learned before. There will be paradigm shifts. So I want you to be taking videos. I want you to intentionally engage in all of the homework. Take it seriously. Consistently be attending your weekly coaching calls, and then I want you to come prepared to each of our coaching calls and maybe have your questions written down, really be thinking about what you want to be working on. You're going to be driving this program forward as far as what are some of your goals that you're wanting to attend to throughout the program. So we need to work on some mindset things. So I want you to be keeping in mind that this program will work if you work it, if you engage, if you practice the skills that I talk about. I've been working on this for a long time with a lot of couples and a lot of families, and these perspectives have come through lots of gathering of data. But discomfort is expected. In fact, I would say if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not making the kinds of shifts and changes that are really going to make some big impacts. So expect discomfort. It's a sign of growth. And this takes time. Right? So often people will talk about when we want fast results and we want things to be really quick, we want quick changes, and we can make some significant and long-lasting changes, but it does take time. It takes time for our brain to kind of catch on to the new way of doing things, and so that can be frustrating if you don't know to expect it. So I'm telling you now that it does take time, but that we will be in this process together. I'll be reminding you of how to grow and gain stamina for sure. So my next question is, are you ready? We are about to step into the paradigm shift information. I'm going to read this here to you, and it might not sound like it would change anything, but my belief is if each person truly let this sink in and lived their life the way the next two slides read, then the world would change. Okay, so number one, you are responsible for your own life, happiness, and satisfaction. And you cannot change anyone but yourself. As you listen to that and as you read that, you may think, I know those things, that of course makes sense, that's how I believe the world works. But I'm going to challenge that over and over and over and see, in fact, what your internal beliefs and your belief structures have been. And if your belief that you are responsible for your own life, happiness, and satisfaction, and your actions are really in line with each other. We will be kind of finding any ways inside ourselves that we are actually in responsibility for other people and we are in lower responsibility about our own selves that is really helpful. So we'll be finding all of those places in which we're not truly taking responsibility for our own life, or in some ways we end up taking responsibility that doesn't belong to us in other people's lives around us. So we are going to have a little game throughout the program, and we are going to be on the hunt for these dirty words, okay? These dirty words might be a little bit different than what you're thinking about, but here are the dirty words from my perspective. They are ones that identify other focus and blame. So words like blame, being a victim, experiencing entitlement, starting sentences with the word you or your partner's name. And so I'm going to describe to you what it is that other focus does in relationship and how it ends up creating so many problems. So first off, just start paying attention to the situations in which you find yourself using blaming language, you find yourself feeling maybe sorry for yourself or experiencing some victim emotions and thoughts. You're feeling like you're entitled to something, or you start the sentence with you or your partner's name. Even when you're talking to me, I'll help you work on it. But those are going to be the off-limit words in this program. So as we kind of pay attention to what some of the things that are going to be off limits, let me move into some beliefs that will get in the way in this program. So one of the ideas is that self-focus, which is what we're going to be working a tremendous amount on, that self-focus feels selfish. So we will be working a lot on that idea. So first off, I want you to be paying attention to whether or not that comes up for you. So first, we'll pay attention to these beliefs that get in the way. Over time, we will start replacing them with alternate beliefs, and we will move our way through that. Another belief that will get in the way is that you are nervous about whether or not your partner is going to change. How can I be sure that they will change? And so that can really get in the way of you finding your own progress and forward movement in this program. Paying attention to ways in which it's gone badly before can trip your progress up. Thoughts of, I don't know how. I have an idea of how I'd like things to be different, but I don't know how to make the change. And that's something that's really common, and just know that I am here to specifically help you figure out how to make these changes. Thoughts like, I just shut down, or I just completely overflow or go volcanic. I don't know how to have that kind of calm, connected, thoughtful conversation. That's something we're going to work a lot on in the program. Here's another one that gets in the way for a lot of people. It's hard to ask for help. If I ask for help, it means that there's something wrong. If I ask for help, it means that there's something wrong with me. And so that is something that can definitely get in the way. Here's a few more. Just this idea that isn't the roommate situation that we're in isn't just inevitable. Is there really a way that we can feel that spark again? So kind of the belief that I haven't seen it played out in anyone else's life, kind of wondering whether or not it's even possible to feel that way again. Here's another belief that can get in the way in the program. Feeling overwhelmed and worried that your kiddo is going to experience negative impacts if you back off and stay out of some situations that maybe you've stepped into before. We talk about other focus. Some of the ways we can have other focus is focusing on our kiddos, focusing on our partner, focusing on other people's lives, and those situations taking up more space than even our own problems. Here is a parenting belief that will get in the way. I'm just going to talk about it just for one moment, and then we'll really dig into it later. But this idea that you need to be a united front. I'll dig into why and how that ends up getting in the way of this whole big project that we're going to be working on of self-responsibility. And this is huge. If you believe that mistakes mean you're failing, then you will struggle during this program, because the program is based on you being willing to take risks and make mistakes and learn that that meant that you are a human and that you're ready to try again. It's hugely important knowing that some of those are some of the normal beliefs, those are default beliefs, and when we see them and when we notice them, we will call them out and learn a different way to respond. So now we will be moving into how growth happens. Right, so one of the things that we're going to be paying attention to is the process of how we integrate new information and make that part of the new way that we are living. So if I describe to you some of the normal stages of growth, sometimes it can help us calm ourselves down when things are getting difficult. As I described these 4 pieces involved with growth, I want you to also notice that they repeat over and over and over each time we learn something new. So first it starts, step 1 is commitment. You've already done that as far as growing things in your relationship and growing yourself up in ways as regards to autonomy and better connection. So you've made the commitment step, and so now we will be stepping into the courage stage. It took some courage in order to make the commitment, but now we will be doing hard things. That's really important about the courage step, because if we know it's normal and even expected to feel discomfort, then it tends to go better. We can hang out there for longer periods of time, and that's what we need in this process is stamina. After we have used our courage to get over the hump of trying something new, a very cool thing starts to happen and our capability starts to increase. This is an amazing thing to see because, people say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. If you've been in your relationship a while and it seems like some of those patterns seem really ingrained, you will start noticing as we move into this stage 3, your capability will begin to change. Your capability for patience, for listening, for vulnerability, for growing your own autonomy and making decisions based on your own value sets, for compassion, for connection, that your capability will begin to increase. Then, of course, you could only imagine step 4 would come right behind that, confidence. Feelings of, I can do this differently. We never have done it differently, but now I know that new things in my important relationships become possible, which is an incredible thing. Now we get to start all over again. It's kind of like an upward spiral. We then double down on the commitment and we begin to choose new things to commit to as far as growth happens. And then we go through the process again, courage, growing capability, and increased confidence over and over. So learning about that will kind of set the framework for the beginning of this self-focus paradigm shift. First, I want to talk to you about what self-focus is so that we can start to delineate that out from some of the things you might have thought it was before and some of the things you might be afraid that it is. So self-focus, we can say, is that we spend more time thinking about our own problems than other people's problems. That means when we have realized that we've missed the mark in some way, according to our own value sets, we've snapped at our kids, we haven't been good at listening when it comes to our partner relationship, we have been not using the best productivity we could when it comes to our work life because we're very tired and we haven't been using good self-care. So then we focus and intentionally work to change some of those things. That would be thinking about our own problems rather than thinking about the things that our partners need to do differently, the ways in which our children aren't showing us the kind of maybe gratefulness, gratitude, or respect that we're wanting, and we get really, really focused on their problems and forget to take care of ourselves and take care of our own problems. So self-focus is spending time thinking about how we can make adjustments to become better versions of us. We feel secure enough to clarify, set, and even then, hard part, follow through on what I call self-limits, but also you've heard of as being boundaries. The reason I call them self-limits is basically I imagine them coming from a position of an awareness that I am not infinite and that I do end somewhere and my capability is only so much. And so when I recognize that, then I'm able to let other people know that my answer to something is no, out of a position that it's because I've come to the end of my own limitations, not because of some problem that they're creating. We'll get more into the clarification of self-limits as we go. But one of the things in self-focus is that we get clear enough and secure enough in our own self to be able to set boundaries. And when a problem comes up, instead of just flopping back on our back and saying, well, never mind, I've run into an obstacle, instead, we approach our challenges with creativity, willingness to navigate, think through, think outside the box, and come up with some really great answers. This next item is really, really valuable. Preventatively pursue self-care. We don't just go get a massage once we've cracked, shouted at everyone in the house, slammed the door, and left for the afternoon, which, hey, that's a good time to get a massage. But the goal is that we use these self-care items preventatively. We're going to be talking about all kinds of self-regulation, deep breathing, drawing, journaling, talking to a friend, yoga, going for a walk, reading a good book, taking a hot shower, getting a massage, mindful eating, all kinds of self-regulation activities, petting the dog. But the goal is that we store up a whole bucket full of self-care so that when the situation is stimulating and asking for something of us, that we are able to respond thoughtfully, just the way we want to, because we have preventatively taken care of ourselves. And then this last one is huge, that I figure out what I need and I figure out how to get my needs met. That the fact that I have needs is not other people's responsibility. It's mine to figure out what it is that I need because I'm the one who would know best. And then I work to collaborate with a whole host of variety of resources to get those needs met. One of which might be my partner, but it certainly is not their responsibility. It's my responsibility to figure out what I need, then to figure out how to get my needs met. So we'll be working a lot on that. Okay, so after we have looked at what is self-focus, something we can move on to now is thinking about some surefire ways to fail. I have collected this list over my 10 years in working with couples and have a lot of feedback on ways that obstacles pop up that get in the way of progress. Each of the things that I talk about are from the perspective of what tends to get in the way of productivity. So that is number one, focus on your partner gets in the way of productivity. So often couples will come in and what they want to do is talk about their fights. They want to talk about the ways in which their partner's doing things wrong, the ways in which their partner needs to change, and the ways in which their partner has hurt them. Now, the point is not that all of those things are invalid. The ways in which you've been hurt are valid things to discuss. However, over-focus on your partner will be an obstacle to your own growth, and it will certainly be an obstacle to productivity and progress in the relationship. So another one is being immature. Often I'll have couples that get into discussions and they start to go tit for tat, they start to go low, they start to talk about things that maybe their partner has shared with them in vulnerability and honesty about their past, and those kinds of items come up in really heated discussions. Immaturity is going to definitely be an obstacle for productivity in your relationship. So I will be using maturity as a very high goal, and you'll notice how much it helps you stay on track and have you having the kind of connection and forward movement that you might be looking for. Another item is staying invested in perfection. If you imagine that some of your goals are to be superhuman, then you'll notice that there's going to be a lot of frustrating things about your relationship. If your goal is to do it right all the time and to do whatever it is that your inner critic is telling you you should be doing, it often creates obstacles. Another item is the belief that you are sufficient all by yourself and the challenge with reaching out to other people to gather help. I often tell clients that we were not ever meant to do this alone. And so even if you are over this process, you begin to, in a really healthy fashion, rely less on your partner, meaning have the pressure of the expectation of your partner being the only resource lessened, then what you're left with is needing more. And the goal is not that when you need more, you just dig into your own self more. One of the things that you can do to alleviate that is to also ask for help in lots of other ways. And then the last one is basically focus on any other thing other than yourself in this process. That might be your dog, I'm not kidding, your kiddo, your work, kind of your hobbies, anything like that. Things that will get in the way of progress and productivity in this program are going to be focusing on other things other than kind of growing yourself into the version of you that most fits with your own values. Now I'll talk to you about what can you expect to happen. If you're doing all of these really hard things, I would hope that you'd be asking yourself, okay, what are going to be some of the things that are going to happen for me? If you will invest in going through the process of commitment and using your courage, increasing your capability and moving through with confidence, if you're willing to let go of other focus and use your maturity, you are going to become a better version of you. There is a tremendous amount of focus over this program on learning what your personal values are and how you can, in more clear ways, be living that out. You are going to feel more alive and less burdened. Often so much of what burdens us is that we have not taken responsibility for our own self-care, and we have too much taken responsibility for the feelings and the challenges that other people around us are experiencing. So we're chasing their emotions around, carrying their feelings, and not taking very good care of ourselves. So when we make that swap, we often end up feeling more alive and less burdens. And then this amazing thing can happen. The parts that brought the two of you together can really begin to shine. The best parts of you, the playfulness or the creativity or the decisiveness or the compassionate part of you, the parts that were most helpful and sweet and interesting and exciting about each of you kind of get unburdened and uncovered so that you can get back into connection. I want to talk to you about the kind of an overview of the whole program, just so you can kind of be knowing what to expect and how everything kind of fits in together. So this upcoming Module 1 is going to be talking about the secret sauce of taking personal responsibility. After that, we will be moving into understanding reactivity, understanding inflammation. What is it that makes me go berserk when my partner loads the dishwasher wrong? What is it that makes me go berserk when some small item, the content of the situation, does not seem to match up with my emotional reaction to it? So we're going to understand that from the perspective of how we have primitive brains and how that ends up showing up in our relationship. Module 3 will discuss how to stop the injury that often occurs because of reactivity. How do we stop the shrapnel from flying? And how do we stop the hemorrhages that often happen because of hurtful words that get thrown around out of our reactivity? Okay, and moving on into the continuation of the overview, the fourth module will be reflecting on such a central component of the program, and that is clarifying identity. The question of who are you now, who are you this far into this relationship, who are you at your core, what parts of you have kind of gone away, what parts of your edges have been kind of shaved down in order to make the relationship stable in some ways that are not really for the betterment of you or even truly for the betterment of your relationship. How do we rebuild identity based on where you are now, based on value assessment? What are the things that are most deeply important to you, and how do you want that to shape your behavior? Module 5 will be learning how to implement these strategies, because we'll talk at significant length about what the most important tenets and paradigm shift items will be. But of course, the implementation, the practical application of these lessons is going to be crucial. Learning how to run experiments and what we do when an experiment has not gone well. How do we learn from it and how do we adjust that? Module 6 will focus on how to keep the virus from spreading. Basically, the reflection on this will be, how do I minimize the impact of my marital tension? How do I reduce the impact on my children? How do I keep the items that belong in my relationship with my partner out of my relationship with my child? And how do I make sure that I'm supporting my child in all their needs without having any of the challenges that are in my relationship impacting that? So we'll go into depth as far as how do we keep the reactivity in our relationship from overflowing into our children's life. Module 7 will be focusing on parenting philosophies. I think that, one thing that you might have heard me say already is that my belief is that a united front may not be the most helpful thing for a child. I think because that means often one parent wins and one parent loses. And how do we create individual autonomous parenting philosophies that are clear, based on values and based on really healthy tenets? And how do we allow the variety between our two perspectives? And how do we actually learn to understand how supportive that is to a child's adaptability, their flexibility, their ability to respond differently in different relationships, and how, in fact, that can be a really valuable skill to offer to a child. So we'll build up those parenting philosophies. In Module 8, we'll be talking about how our gas pedal and our brake pedal work when it comes to our own human sexuality. We'll be talking about this throughout the program. This Module 8 will just really kind of zoom in on this and talk about the practicalities and what we can learn about different contexts that are supportive for our sexuality and what contexts tend to kind of hit the brakes and create a minimal desire for us. It's a helpful thing to look at it just from your own individual perspective, living in your own body, and then also how does it show up and play itself out in the relationship. And then Module 9, I often refer to this as an 8-module program, but this Module 9 is going to be a bonus one. It's basically just going to talk to you about stamina. What do I do when the old pattern has crept up? How do I hit my reset button, kind of come back to these new ideas and keep on implementing them with what we'll talk about called meaningful endurance? And so we will, the focus of that is how to keep this growth going. The foundations of the program are in front of you now. So you'll see some familiar words: responsibility, maturity, compassion, right? We're going to get really far into that. And then self-limits. We can also talk about those as boundaries. So when I say responsibility, I mean the willingness to take responsibility for the things that belong to you and set to the side the things that others are responsible to. So you'll see how this is such a crux point, this self-focus, this willingness to do self-care, willingness to reach out for support with the belief that it's your responsibility to figure out how to get your needs met. Even if part of that is to collaborate with your partner, that the weight of that rests on you. It significantly reduces resentment in the relationship, and so we'll talk a lot about how responsibility is a valuable asset in this program. The second one is maturity. One thing that I often will talk to couples about is how maturity, it can be one of the most valuable traits that we might have forgotten how to use in our relationship. Sometimes we are so familiar with each other that our partner, in some ways, they get to see a very vulnerable side of us, but also they may not get to see the most mature version of us. So I will be offering feedback often about whether or not I think you could maybe use more of your maturity, and I'll note when your maturity is really showing up in great form. The third foundational component is compassion, right? Some people kind of gag at this word and they don't really know what it means, and they don't know if it means pity, they don't know if it means empathy, they don't know kind of what it means, this word compassion. But we'll really dig into what it means to have compassion on two people, both on ourselves as well as our partner, both on ourselves as well as all others. How do we use compassion to lead our conversations and to kind of get the best understanding, be the best listeners that we can be, as well as take fantastic care of ourselves? Then the fourth one is self-limits. One of the challenging things that often comes when people talk about boundaries is they often talk about setting boundaries on someone else. Something will be a little bit different in this program, which is why I call them self-limits. I think that the most effective limits that are placed are actually placed on our own self, meaning I have come to the end of my ability to show up in this way or that. Therefore, I need to ask for something different to happen. Rather than from the position of an aggressive, shaming, or controlling kind of ultimatum type line that is often associated with people saying they're setting their boundaries. One thing that we'll know that will tell us the difference between whether or not we're setting a self-limit on our own self, or reflecting a self-limit of our own capacity, or setting a boundary, which may not be all that helpful, is the posture from which we do it. If you're coming from a vulnerable position, if you're talking about the ways in which you are passing by some of your most important values and the ways in which the end of your capacity is showing up, then you're probably talking about a self-limit. So I'm going to help you delineate in those situations. But they are truly essential for us to be able to kind of protect our own energy so that we can best show up in loving and connected ways to the people around us. So those are the foundations: responsibility, maturity, compassion, and self-limits that the entire program rests on. We'll go into a lot more depth on each of those as we go. So you have arrived at the end of the Start Here video. You'll be moving on now into Module 1. I want to remind you to do the videos in order, right? You'll get signals from me on when you're ready to move on to the next video based on homework, based on our coaching calls, but I want you to I know I put out a lot of juicy details and good stuff that we're going to be working on in the future, but I want you to take everything in order, right? Because they're all building blocks that build on each other. So going from here, what I want you to do is go to the Module 1 video. I want you to go through that. I want you to go through the homework and take it seriously. Think on each of the items that are listed out in that homework worksheet. And then I want you to attend your weekly coaching call so we can process through some of the places you might get snagged as you're working on your homework and working on some of your thought experiments. Okay, so I've covered a lot in this video. Move on to Module 1 and I'll talk to you soon.